Welcome to the Fight for Our Citizens podcast. I'm your host, Uncle Fox, and tonight I'm here with my sister, Sinetta and Dwight. And Sinetta, can you introduce yourself, please?
My name is Sinetta Lopez, with me name Brown. I'm a SAPTA case manager for Native Health for a substance abuse and aftercare program. And I'm here tonight with a really close friend of mine. I consider my brother as well, Dwight.
Dwight, how you doing?
Awesome.
All right, I'm glad you made it.
Thank you.
All right.
Well, my name is Dwight Francisco. I'm a member of the Tohono O'odham Nation. Professionally, I do a variety of different things as an independent consultant. I provide wellness training and facilitation at the national level, tribal level, and also the state level. So I have a really strong passion for helping others, and a lot of what I do is spiritual based off of culture, custom, tradition. Personally, I'm a divorced father of 4 children. I have 5 grandchildren.
Wow.
I'm an open and proud member of the LGBTQ Two-Spirit community. I'm also a survivor of childhood sexual assault, and I'm also in recovery. God willing, on December 2nd, which is in a couple weeks, I will have 10 years of active recovery from drinking and drugging.
Oh, wow. Nice.
Yeah, so I got a birthday coming up.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so is this like, from all the experience that we all have growing up Native, is that something that you're doing today because I know you do a lot of workshops, and Netta does also do a lot, she goes to a lot of conferences and mental health programs. Is that something that you were wanting to do, like once, you had the chance to do something to help other Natives?
Yeah, absolutely. I think, and that's how I met Sinetta, was we were both employed. When we met, we were both employed with Native American Connections when Patina Wellness Center housed both men and women. And so, I think it's safe to say that we both recognized the passion that we shared in helping our relatives.
Yeah.
But I didn't do this work my entire life. Before I got into sobriety, I was a legal advocate, former prosecutor, probation officer, legislative assistant.
Okay.
So I practiced, the majority of my career before becoming alcoholic was in the legal field for my tribe. So when I came into this field, it was, 1, with the intent that I would never go back and practice law again.
Yeah.
And then 2, I wanted my life to be meaningful and fulfilling. And I found that because the greatest gift I got in recovery was, 1, to be able to stay clean and sober, but also to see that I wanted other people to achieve the same thing for themselves. And that began my journey into working in behavioral health and substance use disorder recovery and treatment. And then finding this path into like just really being traditionally rooted and grounded in traditional healing methods and approaches that help people to understand that, coming into recovery from alcoholism and drug abuse and addiction is not just about meeting with the therapist and getting assessments and going to group. It's also about healing the whole body, mind, body, spirit. And so there's a variety of ways that we can practice that. But what I found works for me, and I encourage other people to explore it for themselves, is how do you balance our spirituality as Native American people in recovery? How do you incorporate that reconnection back to the traditional medicines of our people, the incorporation of eagle feathers that are important connection in the form of prayer and medicine when we pray? And some examples are like the talking circle, or when we go in the sweat lodge, or when we in Sundance when we go on the hill. Those are all really important practices that we stress to members in the recovery community, that these things will help you, but it's a decision you have to make for yourself. It's something you have to have faith and believe in for you. And if it's none of those specific things, then maybe it's something that you connect with back home in your community or your own culture.
Well, I always notice, like, with my sister, I never thought that, she's what field she's in right now. She's in mental health, and Sinetta has always been, in ceremonies and athletic sports and raising her kids. So it was good to see my sister going into mental health, and Sinetta with like all the experiences that we have. Even what Dwight had talked about is something that we all seen on the reservation or witnessed. Is that something that you use when you, the reason why you went into mental health for the Native Americans?
Well, originally, probably like in 2008, our dad, the late Thomas Brown, was involved with mental health. And I remember him telling me before, when I was kind of trying to figure out what I was going to do, he had told me, he said, you should get into mental health because that's going to be big soon, babe, because he said a lot of our Native people are needing that. And I was like, oh, yeah, mental health, okay. Didn't kick in for a while until I went back to school. And originally I went to school to become to actually teach Native American studies and work tribal development was my minor. But it wasn't until I got hired at NAC, Native American Connections, where I started to see so many of our own people in there. And the struggles and what they were going through, and I had one of the ladies that worked with me, and she was a recovering addict, but she had like 2 masters, and she asked me, what are you gonna do? How long are you gonna be here? Is this what you want to do? And I told her, I think I'm gonna look for something else. I'm just waiting for something else to open. But she said, I really would reconsider that. She said, because our people are hurting. And there's not enough of us helping, and you should really consider staying. So that really sat with me, and then it also sat with me with what Dad said, and I thought I did have a conversation with Dad before, and I told him, and he said, yeah, I told you that's a good field for you to be in. That's what I'm trying to do, because our dad had his own men's
Circle of Native
Minds where he was doing all these work, and so I said, okay. I said, yeah, I think I'm gonna. This feeling of staying is what's making me, think this way. So I stayed, but not realizing that working there was gonna heal me as well, or not even really heal me, but it brought out a lot of stuff about me that I didn't realize, because I had for a while was just doing a lot of drinking, and I and my brother can witness to this. I have gotten in a lot of fights, and it seemed like that's all I was doing was drinking and I would fight, and I had a lot of anger issues.
But it does seem like it wasn't, it seemed like, hate to say, but it was normal. Yeah. It wasn't like Sinetta was.
It's just like, that's what I did.
It's just what everybody did.
Yeah. And it's like, oh, well, you always had that person in your group where you were just like, oh, they're the ones that you can't take them out, or you need to cut them off, or that was me.
Yeah.
And I didn't realize that until it started really messing up my life personally, and then mentally I started to it started to put me in depression. So I had made a decision that I'm going to be here and I'm going to be working with these clients, and I'm going to be sitting here and telling them to stay sober, and I'm going to tell them, what classes they need to be in, and give them this inspired speech. But yet I'm not walking in that footsteps of them. I'm not walking the red road. So it just really made me feel like I'm one of them too. It's just that I'm not in here, because I could see the girls in there too. When we worked with the women, I could see a lot of them were my attitude, how they were acting, and how my attitude was like that. And so I can relate to that. So in order to help out and to do this, I had to also be sober. I had to also follow what I preach, not even preach, but really just talking to them. And that's how I ended up staying in there.
That's how you met Dwight.
And I met Dwight when we worked at the men's facility. We worked together, but we worked in the same place, but we didn't work together until we went to the men's facility together. And there was times I knew Dwight knew a lot about the talking circle, and I just wanted to pick his brain. So I used to go in there a lot and just talk to him and listen to him, and he'd give me advice on how to handle the clients, and that's how we really got connected, and just our stories and just being there, you know, and that's how a majority of us are connected now. We have friends that we still are connected to that worked at NAC, that are in recovery as well. So it's good to have like a good support system for us to like go hang out with someone that we know we're going to be safe with and everything's going to be good. And we all have the same passion, and that's to help out our own Native people. Because I remember what Dr. Begay said when we went to the opioid conference. He was talking about, at one point he said, the alcohol is not what's evil. Like, the alcohol is not what's bad. It's how you are perceiving the alcohol, how you are taking the alcohol, what you're doing with it. Mm-hmm. And I was like, because I always knew there's people out there that can drink and they're totally fine. Mm-hmm. They can go have a good time, celebrate, you know, everything's good. But then there's people out there that can't just take one drink. There's people out there that are not partying. They're not celebrating. Mm-hmm. They're taking that drink because they need to hide, they need to heal, or they're just ignoring stuff. And that's when it starts to really affect you, and you just have to keep doing it. And so those are the ones that we really try to help out, because we know generational trauma, you know, there's things going on in their lives that they haven't faced because, you know, they've been addicted to something, and just trying to really get them back to their native, like their culture, because that's where they're kind of missing. And so that, and it's so much work to do. There's so much work to do because we're so high in numbers for alcohol. We're so high in numbers for, now we're going to be fentanyl, you know, it's just a lot for us to like start healing. And I work at Native Health, and I work in Native Health Central in Phoenix, and we're right in like the rural area of where everyone is at.
You're not the popular department either, no. Right? Because Native Health has Instagram, and the behavior in the department you work in is not really ever.
Yeah.
You're doing all the behind the scenes.
Yeah, and that's how it is. It's like Native Health, you know, behavioral health, mental health. It's kind of you know, we're supposed to be, it's a, you know, private, because we don't want to. Yeah, your clients. Yeah. Okay. But I mean, we do. Try to, I mean, well, that's my job really, is to go out there and do outreaches to let people know, hey, we have services, we have this, you can come here. But we do get a lot of them to come, they come in and they're looking for places to go. Like, I've been homeless, I need to go to treatment, I want to go back home. And so we really try our best to give them resources and send them home or send them to treatment, or, you know, just be a safe space for them, because it's hard when you're going home and when you're coming to work and you're just passing them, and they're just right there, you know. And it's like, but a lot of them don't want help, you know what I mean. A lot of them are kind of adapted to their environment, and not only that, but there's a stigma, you know, that stigma of like not wanting to come in and get help, because, you know, Native people
a lot of pride,
have a lot of pride, and they don't want the help, or maybe they don't even trust the government, you know, we don't trust the government, you know, kind of situation, or maybe they came in for help and it didn't go right, and now they don't want to. And especially when we had the whole fraudulent sober livings, a lot of them are now really traumatized from getting help. Not only are they traumatized before, but now they're traumatized again because they tried to get help, and then, you know, they were being used for their money. So it's a tough, it's really tough, but I don't even look at it as a job, and I know Dwight doesn't either. It's kind of just like, we're there to help, but yet, I mean, we are getting paid, but not, I mean, I'm not going to say like, that's why I do it. It's not, you know,
I would you guys do it not getting free. Paid doctor money for it. So, and you guys are doing it to help.
Yeah, we're doing it to help. And it's a lot of work, but, that's why when I meet people that are in that sober circle, I really hold on to them, because it's just, I know how hard it was for them to get sober. And I know now, like, they're really trying to turn around and help out, just like Dwight. And it's just awesome to see. So, and again, this is something that I had, and I had with my father was I was able to come home from work or talk to him on the phone, and he would talk to me. And you know what's amazing is that I was finding everything out, like about the parenting, the talking circle, like everything, like all these curriculums that we did. And when my dad had passed away, I was going through my dad's stuff, and I was looking through things, and he had one of his bags in a box, and I opened it, and my dad had so much curriculum in there from when he did a lot of his classes. He had the fatherhood stuff. I mean, he had everything. And I was like, oh my God, my father had, like my dad, and I mean, I'm a case manager, and my dad had, books on case management, for Native communities. Right. And I'm just like, what?
He had a lot of stuff.
Yeah. And I couldn't believe it. I was like, wow, Dad, like if he was still around, I know my dad we would have been able to open up something with my dad, or my dad could have been really a key person to help, to be part of the recovery journey and helping people get back to their culture. But yeah, so I think that this is where I'm supposed to be, because, I don't drink no more. And I don't go around telling people not to drink, because that's not me. Yeah. It's really, it's kind of like how you come around people that are going to church, and, and they don't, you don't want to hear them tell you go to church, So I'm not going to do that. I just, for me personally, I don't drink. That's, not
you don't
saying,
go. If there's drinking, you don't go.
Yeah, I don't go because, I don't know. I just don't live that life no more. And it took me a lot to, get myself back on my feet, and then also to be the mother and the person that I want everybody to know that I really am. And instead of all the times that I've misbehaved and just really didn't care and just kind of was, so I just really wanted my daughters to see me in a better light, and actually look at me and say, man, I want to be like that, where I want to be like my mom, or I really appreciate how my mom is, or something. And I don't need a lot of people to say it. I mean, if it's just my kids, I'm fine with it. But
I need a couple people to say it.
I just need a couple people.
The main
shout out. Just need to shout out. No, I was kidding.
Dwight, does you brought up the culture. Does that help a lot in these recoveries and the things that you do for the?
Oh yeah.
For the people that is trying to get better.
No, definitely. I think I'm sitting here listening to a lot of the things that Sinetta's talking about, and it's kind of like, for me, reminiscing on how I got connected to the practice of using culture, custom, and tradition to help heal people, because, like Sinetta said, when Dr. Begay presented the concept or the idea that, and I think this is one of the stigmas that a lot of people hold on to in Indian country, is that the problem is that they drink too much, or they can't drink like a normal person. And when I work with relatives, and Sinetta knows this of me, that I don't like using stigmatized words like client or member, because it is a stigmatized form of labeling our relatives. And in Indian country, we know that we're all related in one way, shape, or form. Yes. By clan, culture, blood, marriage, custom, tradition.
Somehow we're related.
Right. We're all related in one way. Yeah. We regard ourselves like that, as relatives. And so when I work with the relatives, when I get a new guy coming into a program, whether it's a 12-step program, Wellbriety, support circle, or working in treatment, I explain to them, and a lot of times this will throw them off. I said, you have to understand that you came here to identify a very important problem, and drugs and alcohol are not your problem. They're a symptom of the problem. And what you've been trying to do is you've been trying to find a solution to a really hurtful, traumatic, chaotic, and consequential problem in your life. And a lot of times alcohol and drugs just numbs the feelings and the thoughts behind that. So when you come into treatment, which me and Sinetta have worked just to comment on what she was sharing earlier about I think for us, it's the sense of satisfaction and the smiles and the trust and the respect that they give back to us, because that's exactly what it is coming into treatment or working with somebody in IOP. It can be really difficult and challenging to get across to them what we're trying to teach them and instill in them. But once they begin to learn to trust you and give you that respect, they know that you're there and you care. I go home in the evening and I'm like, man, that felt good. I had a good day today. I had some good conversations, and I gave them some good encouragement. And so in my years at Native American Connections, I climbed the ladder from a BHT position into a case management position, and then I was put into a cultural counselor position. And then that cultural counselor position is where I really got to put to use a lot of the traditional knowledge that I held coming up from the Tohono O'odham Nation, but also what I got to see in practice in intertribal concepts like Wellbriety. You know, Wellbriety is not culture specific to any one tribe, but it incorporates a lot of the strength-based knowledge and ceremonies. So when we do talking circle, we try to do it so that it's inviting to everyone. Yeah. So when they look at the altar and they see the medicine and they see the water, they see the abalone shell and they smell the medicine and they see the eagle feather, I try to explain to them that these are all important components of the healing process, because what you see, what you smell, what you hear, what you taste, what you touch are all parts of what help your spirit within connect with your physical existence on the out. And when they hear that explanation, they might be hearing it for the very first time, and they may have grown up with a Che or a relative that has always explained custom and tradition to them, but they became disconnected from that when they were drinking and drugging. So it's very comfortable when they hear somebody finally give some sense into what does that altar space mean? What do these protocols mean? Why do we utilize this space and this time in the healing process when someone comes in and, you know, if they've just gotten out of prison or, you know, they've lost their job and their family doesn't want to take phone calls from them or have anything to do with them because that loss of trust and respect has happened, and it's of consequence for the decisions that they made in, you know, being drunk and high. Yeah. So, yeah, I've gotten to a place where I'm very comfortable using both my own experience, but also in what I've been taught by elders and mentors. And I can just throw out a list out there, you know, Janelle Allen, who's a member of the Navajo Nation and is currently serves as an elder in residence at ASU, has me doing some of the traditional storytelling and work with them. Hetty Emery, who's the cultural counselor that I served under when I was a cultural counselor at Native American Connections. Auntie Theta Newbreast, who's former executive director and one of the co-founders of Native Wellness Institute. Now I serve as a master facilitator and trainer for them in a couple of their curriculum. So a lot of what I do is very deeply rooted in spirituality, you know, in the form of prayer and guiding people through ceremony, you know, reconnecting them with the medicine and helping them understand that it takes both Western world philosophical approaches mixed with traditional healing methods to really heal our mind, body, and spirit. It was interesting. I was on the traditional healers panel for the 6th annual Veteran Symposium, which was held at the Wild Horse Pass Casino and Hotel here in Phoenix.
Is that a couple of weeks ago?
Yeah, it was actually just this past week.
Yeah, just past week. Okay.
Yeah.
So you're at? Probably not.
Well, they had
There was a couple.
There was a Veteran Symposium on Friday and Saturday, and then the following Tuesday, Wednesday was the opioid substance use disorder conference.
No, I was
So
not.
they were kind of back to back. But at the traditional healers panel, I gave a description and I said, maybe this will help the audience understand what it is that a healer does. And I gave the description of, like, do you remember a long time ago when they used to have these kiosks at the mall where they had the 3D picture where you go really close and you put your nose up against the picture and then you slowly move back and there's a 3D form that's supposed to stand out. Yeah.
Start a ship or something.
Yeah, it separates, the 3D version separates itself from the background.
Yeah.
And I was explaining that as healers, what we do is we go behind the object and go into the background.
Mm-hmm.
And sometimes that's that unseen spiritual realm. And what we do is we try to see what's causing the real problem, which is a lot of times our spirit is surrounded by negative energy like sadness, depression, anger, frustration, resentment, helplessness, hopelessness. And the goal is we put ourselves in that place to try to find the best way to heal what the problem is. But we have to do that at the cost of making sure that we can come back.
Yeah.
And restore, maintain our connection to the physical realm.
Mm-hmm.
And so it's kind of like going back and forth and learning how to recognize the signs and symptoms of spiritual sickness. And then guiding them through the healing process that will realign everything. And a lot of our traditional life ways, what we understand from our existence as a human being is that Creator designed our physical existence to be a balance between both spiritual and physical existence. And sometimes the way we understand that balance is that, in all the ways that we exist, physical, spiritual, mental, and emotional, we try our best to balance our lives in all of those areas. But, obviously drugs and alcohol detach us from that balance. And so the goal of working in recovery is how do we heal all the parts that people are sick, physical, spiritual, mental, emotional. And so
like a medicine wheel kind of.
Right. Absolutely. And that's
Definitely.
what the medicine wheel is. It's a teaching to help us to understand how to live in balance and to live in wellness. And so everybody comes with their own story.
Yeah.
Everybody comes with their own experience. And so when I go through the cultural approach, the spiritual approach, I'm always trying to get them to understand that your solution is not my experience. What happened to me and how it works for me isn't always going to work the same way for you. You have to go through the process of telling your story, admitting what happened as a child that exists as the unresolved trauma that you still hold on to this day because you're not ready to talk about it or admit it. And if you don't do that, then we don't know what problems to help you heal from and how to guide you through that process. And so I try my best to blend it. When I say it, I'm talking about the traditional healing methods versus the therapeutic approaches, so that if a therapist is working with somebody that's dealing with unresolved trauma or intergenerational trauma, what I'm doing is I'm trying to get the therapist to support the cultural approach. And then in turn, vice versa, the cultural approach is healing the parts that the therapist is identifying. So if somebody goes through an adverse childhood experiences assessment, it's going to tell the relative what some of the scores are that identify some of the possible problems. But they have to be willing to admit that that's what they have, that's what happened to them. And then guide them through the process of using traditional healing methods to support the healing process. And it's exciting because when you see somebody go through a powerful healing journey and you see them smiling and not cussing anymore and just really being happy, like genuinely happy, like, you've accomplished something really powerful for them. And so
that's good.
Yeah, it is. And I think too, what you were going along with talking about recognizing, and I'm also a trainer for mental health first aid, and I train the staff at Native Health, and but I'm going to branch out and start doing trainings for the community and schools. But what mental health first aid mainly is just when physically you're hurt Everybody sees that. Everybody knows, okay, this person's choking. This person's got a cut on his leg. This person's got a concussion. Whatever signs you see physically. But with mental health first aid, you don't see when someone's going through something as far as maybe depression or mental illness. And so what I do in my training is really trying to teach people how to identify it. And I tell them, and I repeat it over and over, you're not there to diagnose them, but you're there just to recognize it. And you know the people that are like that, either it's in your family or people you work with, something's different about them. Maybe today they're not smiling, they didn't come out of their room, they're not eating, or even at work, they didn't show up on time, or usually they don't miss this many days. Those are signs that something's going on, and just teaching them how to approach, because everybody doesn't know how to do that. Everybody's kind of like, I don't want to get in their business, or I don't want to pry. But
that's how we're all raised. Like,
yeah,
don't ask
and
questions.
that's the whole stigma that I talk about. It's just like, and that's what we have to, and the in the Native community, when I talk to them, that's exactly what they say. They're like, well, we don't know, like, what should we say? Yeah. And my thing is just like, well, it really depends on who you're talking to. Now, if it's someone that you can talk to them, you know how to approach them. You just ask them how they're doing, what's going on. If they don't want to talk, then don't force it, But at least they know someone notices something's going on. Because a lot of times, that's mainly what they want to know. What they want is for someone just to listen, or someone to notice that something's wrong with them. So it just goes through all these steps of just teaching them how to do it. But the one main part that I really and I really emphasize when I'm doing the training is the cultural part, because what we say is like we're all relatives, we're all Native, but we all don't believe in the same thing sometimes. There's some of us that are in our cultural, spiritual, some are going to church, and that's what they believe in. So we can't always assume that the person is going to be just like us, like, oh, they probably go to ceremonies. What if they don't, So there's so many different ways of trying to approach them, but also talking to them, but being considerate of their culture. And especially the number one thing that I did bring up was eye contact, because a lot of Natives don't like to do eye contact.
Yeah, they don't look you in the eye.
Yeah. And it could be either they don't feel like talking to you, they don't feel comfortable, or maybe it's something in their tradition, their culture, that they don't give you the eye contact. And
if you're married too, you don't.
Right.
The men are not supposed to look at another
woman.
Eye.
Yeah. Those are the keepers. No, I'm just kidding.
They might be disrespectful, but it's just that they're not supposed to look.
Yeah, they're not. But we have to inform, other races that, that's, how to deal with that, because they take it as a form of, oh, they don't want treatment. Yeah. They're not listening. They don't want to be in this program. And it's like, no, you have to take in consideration the culture. And that's what they teach you in counseling too. You know?
Yeah, the concept of practicing active listening skills.
Yes.
And that's listed as one of them, is, to make direct eye contact. And I'm like, well, that's contradictory to what our culture, customs, and traditions say. It's a sign of disrespect to stare somebody down.
Yeah.
So like, I think that's one thing that white people need to understand, is that it's not that they're not interested, or they're not wanting to be there. It's actually more the opposite. They are showing you respect because that's how we listen, And before you move on, just that concept of like in mental health, just not being able to, or being more mindful of how to be aware of how people struggle with mental health diagnoses is, I used this recently in one of my trainings. The average person tells a lie 4 times a day, 1,460 times a year, a total of 87,600 lies by the age of 60. And the most common lie is what? And in quotes it says, I'm fine.
Ooh.
I'm fine.
That's so true.
4 times a day is traditional, though.
Hey, we were just balancing everything out, man.
Keeping it tradition.
Right. Keeping it in alignment.
I will tell you, though, our friend of ours, a really good friend of ours, I consider my sister, is Deborah Gwilt. She's a peer support specialist. And, man, she is the best person to have as a peer support specialist, because she has such a huge heart and she cares so much that she does it so naturally. The mental health first aid that I teach and everything, like, she's like the model person for it, because I literally, anyone could be at work and she'd come by and be like, like, I swear it's like either a gift or she has this natural thing where it's just like, are you okay? What's the matter? Give me a hug. Like, she's just so, like, she just catches it so quickly. And sometimes I'm just like, oh man, so, but she, and that's one of the things that I love about this job too, is having that peer support. And peer support, these are people that have been through all this. They've been through recovery. They've been through ups and downs, relapse, everything. They have this real life experience, and they went and got certified to be a peer support specialist. And now they work in recovery, and they're people that someone comes in, it's hard for them to tell you that they have addiction sometimes, or they don't want to admit things. But when you get a peer support specialist, and they know who that is, like, they know who the peer support is. So when you bring them in, they're like, oh, okay, someone that can relate to me. Someone knows what I'm talking about because they went through the same thing. And they're so easy to start telling their story to that person. So it's always good to have that type of person in there. Another one we have is Terrence Chase, same thing. It's peer support. They're both like amazing people in doing that and able to bring it out of them and talk to them because they've been through the same thing.
So everybody that's been through the experience is a big help.
Yes.
In this field.
Yes.
No, that's definitely the truth. Being able to support one another with, making a referral or, asking about resources. If one of us has a question about what the latest resources are, we can always turn to someone that's a part of our, our circle of support. And, it's really awesome that we're able to do that. And it's funny because when you were talking about, that first drink or, just the problem with, being okay with other people who drink normally is something that's really important for, well, at least for myself as a alcoholic in recovery, is I can't base my recovery or my deciding not to drink today off of someone else's decision. And so interestingly, we have another friend in common and a former coworker. So far, most of the names that we've mentioned are former coworkers. But Ellen Holquin.
Ellen, yes.
Ellen Holquin, she's a very awesome, hardworking, very dedicated individual.
Amazing.
She's awesome.
Yes.
There's not enough words to describe just the dedication that she has in serving the members of the sick and suffering community. And so she works at St. Joseph's Hospital. And I think it's an intensive treatment systems program that she's employed with. Oh, wow. But they're at the location is St. Joseph's Hospital. But she recently reached out. And the awesome thing is that this circle is not just on a professional level, it's also on a personal level. And so Ellen reached out. She had been, struggling with some things in life. And so she reached out to all of us and asked all of us if we would attend church with her.
Oh, yeah.
And this is how much love and support we all have for each other. And without a doubt, without any question, I'm very spiritual. I'm not religious whatsoever anymore in my life, even though at one time I was.
We went.
We showed up. we showed up.
Yeah, support for her.
Yeah.
Support for her, and to show her, that we love her.
Yeah.
And we care about her, and we're here, because she's a member of our very tight trusting support group. And and it was funny because we walked into a church, and one of the first things that you see are these trays of
like wine. Well, I thought
it's
it was
supposed to represent the wine, but I guess it's apple juice.
Oh, okay.
I thought it was grape juice.
Grape juice, one of the two. It was juice, but
you're like, where's the salt?
We're all joking around with each other. We're like, oh, maybe this was a bad idea.
Yeah.
Like, are we required to participate in communion? And
yeah.
So
where's the lime at?
I walk over there and I grab a tray and I'm like, I'll see y'all later.
Yeah. We looked at Dwight. What?
But you know, in this life, especially as Native people, that's one of the things that makes it so living a life of balance and recovery is that we can laugh.
Yeah.
We can
Right.
laughter. In fact, laughter is medicine. It's an important part of our existence. You know, it's part of how we cope and we deal with stress and life and so
everything.
You know,
Yeah.
it's just beautiful to be able to have that relatable experience with the people that we're talking about. You know, because it's not just me and Sinetta that go through this.
It's a lot of
Yeah.
community, huh?
It's our little community that we have, our safe circle.
Right.
It's funny though. Before you say, when we went out, Ellen actually got us to go to dinner too. Remember? Was it she or was it I? I forget. I think it might have been me.
I was just gonna ask, what kind of church was it?
Oh, it was it wasn't like a denomination church. It was one of those churches where they like had a band.
Okay. Miracle Church?
What is it called?
It's the old Sam's Club on Indian School and the 51.
Okay.
I think it's a community CCV. Their acronym is CCV.
Yeah.
Something.
Okay, yeah. It
Again,
wasn't like
we
a
didn't
traditional religious,
which I thought it was gonna be, and I thought it was pretty interesting. The music, you know, it was kind of like
it was like being at a concert.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
And they had the light show. I want to say they might have even had fog.
Yeah.
I've seen that like on Instagram or something like that.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Okay.
It was,
and it wasn't like, and see, we didn't know what to expect. I just thought church. That's all I thought.
well, I've never seen a church with a coffee bar.
Oh, they had a good coffee.
They have a coffee bar in the church.
Like a Starbucks.
Yeah.
Did you say 51st and Indian School?
Yeah. And you know what? I was like, oh, it's church. We all need to dress up. And so we went dressed up, and then people were walking in with shorts and tank tops, and and I was like, hey, wait a minute, where are we going? Like, what is this
it's not
place?
like that anymore, like the old days,
But what I was gonna say was we went out to dinner. I think I'm the one that initiated the dinner, and I just said, hey, we should all go eat or something.
Was that the PF
I'm sure
dinner?
PF Chang.
Yeah.
I'm
Shut
sure
up.
you were the one.
Matone, I knew you were gonna say that. Be quiet.
Initiated dinner. Okay.
Oh my God. I swear. You're so lucky you're sitting way over there. Anyway, so we went to go eat, and on my way there, I was driving, and I don't know why I had this thought in my head because it's been so long, but I was like, okay, how am I going to get home? And then I was like, for a split second, I thought, like, how am I going to get home while I'm driving? And then I took a second. I'm like, wait, what am I talking about? Like, because I'm thinking, like, I'm going to go out with my friends, probably get drunk. You know what I mean? Like, well, how am I going to get home? I don't know why it came in my head for a second. I guess. But then I was like, oh, my God, that's not. And then when I remembered where I was going, then I felt like that whole calm, like, safe thing of, like, oh, I'm going to be fine. What am I talking about? I'm going with these, you know, I know who I'm going to be with, and I know what we're going to do. We're just going to, well, okay, first of all, if you want to know who's a real foodie, that's him. That's Dwight. When we got there, I was just going to order.
He was talking about the coffee bar already.
I know.
Right?
We got there. Me and Ellen were just going to order something, and I believe Terrence.
Let's get some appetizers.
Yes, he said that. He was like, let's get this and let's get that. And he's telling the waiter, and then he's like, you guys want to share dessert? We're like, oh my God, Dwight. You know, I mean, like, yeah, he knows all the good places to eat too.
Well, food is healing. So.
Oh, yes, it is. Mm-hmm. Well, when you walk into the restaurant, you're going,
yeah,
you know, pounding your stomach, and you're going, oh, that was so good. Hey.
Well, I do like Dwight, what you do as for traditional teachings, you know, to help people heal. I think that's a good way of doing traditional healing, because there's a lot, like especially in Northern California, there's a lot of classes that it's not for healing, it's just for people to be native. You know what I mean? Like to understand being native, but which sometimes I'm against, but people that you do it for people to heal, I think that's one of the best ways to teach it. Other than just teaching it to have like, oh, hey, I know how to make a dream catcher. You know what I mean? Like it's more beneficial when they learn it to heal themselves, other than just to learn it to be native or to be more native than some other people maybe.
Right.
I think that's a good way of teaching your cultural traditions to people.
It's interesting you bring that point up, because Sinetta was in my presentation. Was it yesterday?
Yes.
Yes. Yesterday, day 2 of the opioid conference. in Maricopa Action Indian community. In the morning, we did our presentation at 9, and that's exactly what I told people is that in this audience, I said, it's important to understand that Talking Circle and the other curriculum that I was speaking on was Gathering of Native Americans. And I was explaining to the audience that they're not classes or workshops.
Yeah.
They're ceremony.
Mm-hmm.
It's real ceremony. And so there's a lot of intentions and a lot of interconnected and interdependent teachings and protocol when you lay out your altar. You want to have a good heart and you want to have good thoughts and good energy so that when people attend your circle, they're going to be the recipients of that good energy.
Yeah.
Just like when we're taught to, when we pick medicine, when you go and you make your offering, your tobacco offering or your water offering or your food offering, and you give thanks to Mother Earth for allowing that medicine to be picked. The same concept. You carry yourself with good energy and good thoughts, good prayers, so that whoever that medicine is intended for is going to also be the recipient of that good energy. So 2 weeks ago, I was with Theta Newbreast and Mark Harris, who is a former professor from Oregon and now lives in Albuquerque. We were facilitating a GONA training of trainers for 60 individuals. And it was a mixture of Native people, African people, white people. And so day 2, it was a 3-day training, and halfway through in day 2, I acknowledged that the energy around the room was really profound, because in Gathering of Native Americans, the first concept is belonging. So you want to create a space where everybody feels comfortable. There's norms that are established, and then you go through the process of making sure that everyone is a part of. And I was explaining to them, some of you may have come to this training expecting to be sitting at a table with, booklets or curriculum.
Supply box.
Right,
Yeah.
supply box, and us presenting, killer by PowerPoint presentation. And I told them, I said, obviously by now it's very obvious that this training is more experiential and activity-based, rather than a classroom or a workshop. And I explained to them, the goal is to teach you how it feels to be in one of the ceremonies, so that you know how it feels when you go back and you lead your participants through an actual gathering of Native Americans.
Yeah.
And so it's kind of like on-the-job training. And so this whole concept of bringing them, the trainers in and walking them through and guiding, what they don't expect is that they're going to suddenly be confronted with the feelings and the ideas, the beliefs, the thoughts behind a healing process, which is what GONA is intended to do. It's a healing experience. It's a healing ceremony. But they come to the training and they don't expect that.
No, they don't.
Well, that's what happened to me. That's what I went through. My grandparents went to boarding school. Oh, is that what intergenerational trauma is?
Yeah,
I was just always used to that. I didn't know that that's what that was. And then suddenly you have trainees crying and processing these feelings and externalizing all of those things. So yeah, when it comes down to it, it's such a profound feeling, and for myself personally, I'm very grateful on a very humble level that I have skills and talents that Creator has instilled inside of me to help me guide people through these experiences. Because I always tell people, especially in recovery, when I share my experience, strength, and hope, and I tell my story, I tell people, I may have done a lot in my life as far as accomplishments. And in my recovery, I've had some really awesome experiences in my life as an independent consultant. And everything that led up to that is really powerful, but that doesn't make me any bigger or better than you. I value you as my relative and my friend. And I think, you know, Sinetta's been kind of the recipient of some of that energy of just being very rooted and, you know, very real, and, you know, down to earth. You know, I never ever tried to impress or make people think that, like I said, bigger or better, you know, and try to value everyone that's around me. And of course that comes with the caveat that, you know, in accordance with our all native customs and traditions is that what you put out there in the form of energy is, it will come back to you. You know, so if I respect you, the expectation is please respect me back. If I love you, love me back. You know, that's just kind of the consensus and the interconnected way that I present myself with people that I meet.
There's certain people, like all of us, like you said, we all have that same experience, but there are some that can actually teach that, and those are, like you saying, the healers. Like you guys can teach that, you know, Sinetta and you. But there are some people like for example, like we all play basketball. Like me, Sinetta, and Bataka. We're all really good at basketball. But Bataka can teach basketball because he has the knowledge and he has the patience. I can't teach basketball. You know what I mean? And that's how I take that with culture. I can't teach it. I could, you know, you can see what I do, but there are certain people that can really explain to you and teach you, and that's, you know, Dwight and Sinetta are the ones that are good. So like we all have that experience, but not all of us can teach it, because like for me, you know, I grew up, you know, culturally and everything like that, but I'm not sure I know how to speak about it. And that's a talent that you guys have, and, you know, something that you guys use for your, you know, for the people and to help other natives. But yeah, it's definitely different. I mean, especially it's a talent to have to teach that, because like I said, there's no way for me like right now to explain what I do. Right. I mean, it's kind of like a gift to actually. Because I did have when I was in Chicago last week, and this lady asked a question about natives, and I couldn't explain it. I had to turn to my uncle and say, "Uncle, you want to answer her question?" Yeah. Even though I know it's in here, he could explain it better, and I think that's how you guys are. You guys, you know, you and Sinetta can explain it better. So it's definitely you guys are definitely special in that area.
Yeah. So I think because with recovery and the Wellbriety and the medicine wheel, when you're looking at it through a recovery process, like the recovery part, like personally for me, like I do know about my culture, both my sides, you know, my Pomo side, my Apache side, and I can answer some questions, and I know I know more than what people may think I do. But when we are talking about recovery and we talk about the medicine wheel and that whole process, I can go on for days because I get it. You know, I get it, because the one thing that I've had in my classes before was when we put up the medicine wheel and I explained the whole process of the growth from the baby to the child to the, you know, preteen to the adult to the elder. And just that first 5 minutes, I'm talking about it, and I turn around and I have a couple of the students be like their faces are just, oh my God. Oh, like a light bulb went off, because I talk about like, and you know about like when you're born and you're a baby, there's so many things that you're supposed to be receiving from your parents. And then when you are missing some of those, that the more you're starting to grow up, you're starting to change in different ways, because you don't have either the trust or you don't have the love. So there's things that you're missing as you're going around your life cycle. And then it makes you, when you become a person of a preteen, where you're trying to figure out what category do I fit in? Am I, you know, a skater? Am I a gangster? Am I, you know, who do I go with? You tend to follow whatever path that you feel like is more rebellious, because nobody's there for you. No one cares for you. You've been abandoned. And And then it kind of gets you stuck in that spot. And that's when you decide to, find something to take the pain away, to make you forget. And that's a lot of times when they fall into addiction. So when I get to that part about all these things that they're supposed to be having and to have like this healthy adulthood, that's when they're able to put their hands up and say, oh, that's what I was missing. I didn't have that. I didn't have trust, or my parent left me. So when we go over the medicine wheel and all that areas that there's, they, and seeing them catch on to it and realize like, oh my God, I don't have a person, like, it's not my fault the way I am. The choices you make, that's what you made. But what got you there, it wasn't completely you, and when they see that, it makes you feel really good. Like we've talked so many times, and that's where I feel more, I guess I feel more confident.
That's your comfort zone.
That's my comfort zone to talk about,
Yeah.
And I always tried to let them know that, and then also because I took American Studies, or Native American Studies, and we learned about all the talking circles and stuff that was going on, and about the first time that alcohol came to to the Native people, and how it was used towards us, just to take things away from us, and kind of take us away from our culture. And at that point too, they were talking about it. They would have talking circles, and they were trying to tell their warriors, quit drinking. We're losing cattle. You're giving away things because you're drinking that spirit, that bad spirit. I mean, it had been going on for decades. And then from that, it just led on to traumatic, trauma, generational trauma. So it's and when I talk like that to the young men, the Native men, they get really sad, but then they get to that point where like, well, I'm not going to be a statistic. Like, no, and then seeing them go through that, and then actually, I know me and Dwight, we still have some type of connections with some of the past relatives that we worked with, and to see them succeed and be a part of like sobriety, and they're like in their own reservation, and they have their own meetings, and now they're like running groups, and it's so cool to see. And remembering where you saw that person before at their lowest, and now to see them like that, it's almost like that's our child. Like our child like is succeeding, and it makes you feel really good. And then because there's times when there's frustration, and there's times when you're just like, I'm not doing a good job. Like I'm not living up to the ability that I think I could change lives. You start to kind of feel down on yourself. But then when you see relatives like that, it's just like, oh, okay, now I know why I'm still doing this. This is the reason. And it makes you feel really good. And personally, I have that situation going on, in my relationship. And my significant other, Quanah Scott, went through the same addiction. He went through his own addiction, and I tried really hard to help him get out of that because of the love I had for him. But I was caught between, okay, I do this for a living, like this is what I usually do for a living. I know how to understand. I can be patient. I can be there for that person. To like, oh my God, how dare you? Where are you at? Like I was kind of caught between both worlds. Like I'm trying to learn how to I'm fighting my feelings, but I knew, and what I see in other relatives, what I knew is that this person is a good person. This person is a great person, but what is covering that is the addiction. And so first thing, you got to figure out what the cause of it is, and then you got to start from there. And once you start healing that part, then you get that person to realize, I don't need to hide from it no more. I don't need to use this substance anymore because I'm okay now. And it's much more work than that. That's just in a nutshell that I'm saying it. But so seeing my significant other blossom from that, and then become the person that I know he truly is. And everybody in my family knows that's how he is, and they adore him. And Dwight's worked with him before. To see him blossom and to see him finally go back to his culture, finally start doing, talking to his father, and his father's a medicine man. And so they're, getting back into it. It's so beautiful to see that. And again, that's like another, I guess, another form of like telling me this is where you should be. This is why you're doing what you're doing. Because you're like taking that person out of there and you're like, no, you're just stay away from that. And so and this is kind of like where, and then I bring him on our journey to like, because he knows a lot, and I'm like, you can use what you have to teach to help others, because we have a lot of people that are off, in Phoenix, when we have these walk-ins come in, or even people that I've talked to before in the past, a lot of their situations is they got kicked off the reservation, that they're not told not to come back, whether it be just because of their sexuality preferences, or it could be maybe something in the family had happened, or they're not native enough. They don't know their language. They don't know this. So, you don't belong. So they kind of just in that era of like not knowing where they fit in. But when you bring them into Wellbriety and you bring them into the whole talking circle, you try to reconnect them that way. And then they get back into like, oh, okay, I am Native, I am Navajo, I am Apache. Like they get back into it and they're not lost. And but it's sad, that they still have to deal with people that are not accepting of you.
Well, that's all new, right? Like the wellness and talking circle and all that stuff. All the good things that's come out today. That's something that wasn't in the past, right? Unless I wasn't seeing it. Growing up on a res and growing up, how we grew up. I don't remember men in talking circles or like, my cousin didn't go to a sobriety.
Yeah.
I'm sure it was there, but probably not native base kind of thing like today.
No, yeah, you're right.
I think that a big part of that is the history of how Wellbriety developed and how they began to take the message of healing from a traditional perspective out into the communities.
Oh, yeah.
And there were several journeys that were made where they took the Hoop of 100 Feathers, which is the culmination of a dream that was had that talked about this tree would uproot itself from the ground and turn itself into a hoop, and 100 eagle feathers would attach itself to that hoop, and they would take that hoop into the sweat lodge. And there were 4 healing qualities that were instilled into that hoop and prayed in. When the hoop came out of the sweat lodge, the elders, there were 40 elders who helped guide where does the journey go from there. And they said that the hoop needed to be taken to throughout the country, a 7,000-mile journey to help begin to heal Indian country. And at least 2 decades went by before, when the hoop came to Phoenix, Arizona, they took it to the state capitol, and Kateri Koyas, who is Don Koyas' daughter, the author of the Riddle to Wellbriety book, who is also now the current executive director of White Bison Incorporated, stood at the state capitol while a 911 call was played on the intercom of a child who was screaming and crying because her dad was committing domestic violence against her mother. And it's very emotional when you hear that, because you hear the full 911 call of this child just distraught and in emotional.
Probably a flashback to a lot of people too. Also,
right. So, it took a while before it began to set roots here in Phoenix. I moved here in 2017 from Tucson, and there was very little Wellbriety.
Mm-hmm.
And then All Nations Wellbriety Circle and its members raised the money to train 20 of its group members.
Mm-hmm.
By then, I was already a fire starter.
Okay.
So I didn't need the training. But when they started to, I think that's where Wellbriety started to catch fire.
Yeah.
Because then they established a Wellbriety Circle on Saturdays at one of the recovery rooms called Backyard Group.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
And then from there, you just began to see over time, from 2017 up until now, there's several talking circles around the valley. There are probably upwards of 50 fire starters, which is an individual who's gone through the training to implement the teachings of the medicine wheel and guide people through that 12-step healing
Which
journey.
I'm a fire starter as well.
And so it's on fire here in Phoenix.
Yeah.
It really is.
There's a lot going on around here.
A lot going on. There's talking circles. There are Wellbriety teachings being taught at a variety of different facilities around Phoenix. And so it's just, Phoenix, Mesa, the West Valley. And
But
so
you are right, though. Back in the days in California, Northern California, there wasn't really, like you said, that we knew of, talking circles or, I just know there was
no nonprofits.
Yeah, I think there was only one treatment center that I knew of for Native Americans, but that was based in San Francisco. But but there was no really like that much. And I think that's the reason why a lot of our people back then didn't really get into that or get the help at the time, because there was nothing there that. And if you heard of treatment or rehab, you definitely thought, well, I can't even afford that, and I don't even know where that's at, and and it's embarrassing. I don't want to tell people that I need to go to.
If you told anybody you need behavioral health, they would think you were crazy.
Yeah, you got like mental illness. It's like,
because I never heard of behavioral health before, like for natives, or I never heard of. There's mental health, there's gut health now. But, I mean, there's a lot of things that I don't remember. That weren't there when I was growing up down there, or on a res, or in here. And now there's a bunch of workshops coming up, conferences coming up, that are really good for a lot of people. Something that I don't personally go to. I don't know why, but it's good to see it done. And I talk to a lot of people that go there, and I really enjoy it. So, whoever it helps, keep going, and I think it's good for the people.
And I think too, like, necessarily too, it's not like you have to have an addiction problem, you have to be an alcoholic to go to these things. And it's really just mental health is really just about like everyday life. I mean, we have people who could be stressed about just the multiple jobs, or the income, or the they're losing their house, or maybe a death in the family, or I mean, it could be those types of symptoms, anything that you can definitely come in for help for, because what we do as Native people, we don't talk about it. We don't talk about it enough. And that was our generation then. We were not allowed to talk about our family. I can't sit here with a counselor and tell them all my personal stories. That's you're going to bring shame. What if they find out you're going to get help? What are people going to think? Like you said, they'll probably think you're crazy,
Yeah.
But that's what we're trying to, when you're in it and you've done it or you worked it, you realize this is something that all our people need, because we're the ones that have been through a lot. Whether, we were removed, the abuse, things that have been done to us. I mean, we have a whole museum that talks about that with the Heard Museum, and so and we're not handling it right. We're just kind of going on with life and just kind of burying it, and just maybe drinking or whatever it is that you're burying, how you're burying it. We're not talking about it, and there's causing a lot of just abandonment of children. I've had several parents reach out to me asking to have a talking circle for young kids, because the kids are trying to deal with the fact that their parent is addicted or their parents are in domestic violence and they don't know how to cope with it, because already now they've been witness to this, and now they have to figure out what they just saw. They have to figure out what's going on, why is this happening. And if you don't get in there and do some early intervention, then it's gonna follow them as an adult and how they make their life choices, and what they expect marriage is supposed to be like or whatnot is supposed to be like. So that's why it's so important to, I think it's amazing that parents are now seeing like, yeah, my child needs counseling, or my child needs to have a talking circle, or my child needs to, like they're noticing it, which is beautiful, because we want to be able to help our children mentally, like healthy and as well as physically, but and so you don't have to feel like, okay, I'm not that bad, so I don't need to go get help. Maybe you don't, but maybe you could find a group. Maybe you don't need to see a psychologist. There's so many groups online that you can go to, even for grieving, it could be any kind of group, things that you can't figure out. It's well, like the LGBTQ community too, they have groups as well, and they have their own, conversations about, sexuality. So there's so many ways to get help, and you don't even have to leave your home. You can even watch it on YouTube. You could join it on YouTube. If you don't want to be in front of people, you could just join on YouTube. So, but there's so many resources out there, and we just want everyone to, think about that.
It's crazy with the, with the, like the Two-Spirit, because it just seems like the natives was way ahead of that. Because I was telling Sinetta, like we grew up on a St. Carlos res where there were Two-Spirit men walking around and never were harassed or bothered, and then they actually played in the men's basketball league, and they would play against us, and they were good too, and
they played in the women's league too.
And then they played in the women's league, and no one ever made a fuss about it.
No.
And and that was like in the 80s that we had them all. We had a Two-Spirit all the time. They made the best beadwork, they made the best moccasins.
Yes.
And so it just seems like we're way ahead of society today on Two-Spirit. Just that, the society today needs to accept that more than. But we had, when they first came out, I was like, well, there's a problem with that? Like,
yeah.
I grew up just it being normal, and so it's glad that, it's coming out to accept it more. But I feel like the natives on the res at the time was already accepting that a long time ago, It was tradition.
It was the same out in Sal's on the Tohono O'odham Nation.
Yeah.
I can count on both my hands how many Two-Spirited relatives I knew that were either what they call non-binary today, or very gender fluid, and they were accepted. One of the memories I have of interactions like that was when my godmother passed away. I was probably around 11 years old, and in the O'odham way, we didn't ever have one-day services. We always had an all-night wake, and there's protocols and understandings why we do that. And I remember, it was the middle of the night, and they were praying for my aunt, saying rosary, and I got up out of the church, walked out of the church, and went over to the kitchen, and my uncle and his wife, and one of the members of the community who is very feminine acting, and his name was Gabriel, but everybody called him Gibra, which is kind of like an O'odham translation of Gabriella.
Okay.
And so, but was always known as being very feminine, very identified more as a woman than a man. But was one of those people that could, be very fluid, going back and forth between identities. Right. And so they were laughing and joking, and that was normal. Yeah. For them to joke around about it. Really.
It still is.
It is. Yeah. No, it is on the res. It's so normal to just see them interact in the community and all be joking around about each other. And hey, did you find what's his name yet? Yeah. Hey, quiet.
Yeah.
I'm not going to tell you his name, you know, that kind of stuff. And it's like, that's just normal.
Yeah.
Right.
And at least, like you said, in our upbringing, in our time, in our day, in our age. And so to see so many of our two-spirited LGBTQ community members struggle today,
Yeah.
it's disheartening.
Yes,
And
it
so
is.
for myself, not only as a member of the community, but also as an advocate and a spokesperson, you know, at the training level, the facilitation level, is always to be mindful and to correct people as well, because sometimes you might have during the training in Portland, when we were training these 60 individuals, we did a really profound activity with the rope, and they had the women let go, and then they came back, and then they had the men let go, and then they came back, and then they talked about the differences. And so at the end of the activity, I raised my hand and I said, be mindful that when you go home and you facilitate an activity like this, that you need to create and maintain a safe space for our LGBTQ community members, because they might not identify as one of those, but you don't leave them out of the experience. You welcome them.
Yeah.
And that's how we reconnect back with the way of practicing the honoring of these individuals. And besides, you know, a lot of our traditional value systems regard them as holy people, you know, because of that ability to navigate between both feminine and masculine identities. And so, yeah.
When you do these teachings, traditional teachings, is there, do you let the community know, like, this is my Navajo teachings that I know? I mean, because, like, I know my cousin Eagle would have like classes like that about hair, but he would say, like, this is how Pomos we do it. So find out how your tribe does it, but you know, if not, then do it this way. But just let you know, this. I'm not saying this is the only way to do it. You might want to ask your community. Right. Is that something that you try to, like, when you go to Portland? Do they know you're teaching? Is it Navajo tradition, or are you just teaching like basic?
Well, he's Tohono O'odham.
So I mean, a couple of different levels.
Yeah.
No, I get what you're saying.
Yeah.
No, absolutely.
Yeah.
The example you gave is a perfect example of how I try to approach it, because I know my customs, my culture, my tradition, and my language, but it's never cool for me to enforce that upon somebody else and say, this is how you have to do it.
No,
right.
Because that's not cool. That's not only is it not cool, but it's wrong.
Yeah.
Because you want to help them to understand that part of the healing process is to guide them in reconnecting with their own identity.
Yeah.
And so their own identity might have protocols and processes that are way different from me as an O'odham person.
They might say, I don't turn left, I turn right.
Right.
Yeah.
You know, something
Exactly.
like that.
And we acknowledge that in Talking Circle.
Right.
Yeah.
We do, because I do honor, if it's a Wellbriety talking circle, I do honor going clockwise, but in my custom and tradition, we do our traditional ceremonies counterclockwise.
Right. This Pomo way.
Pomo way too.
See, so like that, like we run into those, sometimes we run into those scenarios, but I see it on 3 different levels. One is always acknowledging that this is my way. This is how I'm speaking from the perspective as an O'odham person.
Yeah.
And then coming into culturally respectful inner tribal perspective, which is what Wellbriety is. Wellbriety is just kind of a template that the goal and the design is like, here's something that you can use that will guide you back towards your own identity and understanding of who you are and where you come from, which is the third part. So I see it on those 3 different levels, and so I'm always being mindful, to respect the communities that I go in. If I'm sharing a story, or if it's even a part of my own experience, strength, and hope, and I'm telling them, you know, this is just some perspective. This is how I look at it, but you may see it different.
Yeah.
Which doesn't make the explanation, the teaching, or the protocol any right or wrong. It just means that you practice it differently.
I think that's a good way to put it out when you do it, is to say, this is how I do it.
Right.
You know, I think that's really a good way. I've heard people say, this is how you do it. And it's like, well, that's not my way. You know, but I did notice that, Sinetta, when we went to, it's called the Boys with Braids conference.
Oh, yeah.
Which I think is a great conference for the kids, the little kids, to understand their hair and how long it is. And, you know, how to take care of it and how to appreciate it in front of, like, you know, the outside community or outside side. But I was telling my cousin Eagle, I was like, Eagle, the only thing I would say about the boys with braids is that I've never seen my son with braids. I've never seen the Apaches with braids. Mm-hmm. I've never seen the Navajos. They got their own way of doing their hair. The bun, I don't know what this is traditionally called. Hopi's got their own way. Tohono O'odham's got their own way. I said, the braids sounds more like either Northern California or Midwest. I said, because, you know, our nephews like Cody and everybody from St. Carlos, all down, dude.
Yeah,
my
always
son,
down.
all down.
Yeah.
And I'm like, why? You know, like, I didn't notice that until later. Like, so we all go to a conference. My son would be like, why am I here? If he goes to the Boys to Braid concert because he doesn't have a braid. Yeah. And so when I asked around, it was like, well, the Apaches keep it down because it's like it's the extra sense of like the wind and, you know, it's like a protection. Mm-hmm. But that's what I was asking, because that's when I was telling like my cousin, like, I don't think the Boys to Braid is for every, you know, native. It does talk about how to take care of your hair, but to put it in a braid, I'm like, I just now notice it. I only notice it because, you know, Wea has long hair. Yeah. So that's when I started to notice, like, wait a second. Cody, you know, Marty, Wea, Vansler, all my cousins, all just straight now. Like, and the Navajos, they have theirs in the bun. You know, so it's like, right. But they kind of understood what I was trying to get at. You know, like, how do we go about, like, you know, teaching them, like, this is how I do it, but, you know, you might want to find out how your tribe does it. But we all connected, like, with Mother Earth is all the same. But I'm just talking about, like, because, like, we all got different creation stories. And, you know,
well, yeah, definitely. We're all, like I said before when I was talking about mental health, we're all relatives. We're all, maybe I met someone that's the same tribe as me, but I can assume, or someone that's another tribe, I can assume that their teaching is the same way as what I know, you know.
I have an interesting story that is reflective of that.
What?
So when I was the cultural counselor at Native American Connections, I was responsible for all of the cultural service providers. And at Native American Connections, what a cultural service provider is, somebody that's been approved and certified to actually provide traditional healing methods. Yeah. And the way I would tell people why that was important is because, you know, you compare it to Western world, white man way, you wouldn't have somebody that didn't have the credentials to come in and provide therapy, right? You want somebody that's qualified and has the credentials and is, you know, licensed. Mm-hmm. Well, same thing with the cultural healer. You want to make sure that you're providing somebody that's going to take care of the spiritual needs of their relatives in a good way. Mm-hmm. And so that was what part of my responsibility was. So I was also responsible for making sure that the grounds were taken care of, where the sweat lodges were at, that we always had plenty of wood and, you know, a replenishment of grandfather stones, because obviously they break down when you heat them up, right? Right. So, you know, I'm out there helping them, the relatives get ready for, it was a men's, I remember specifically because this story that I'm going to tell you is specifically related to men. Mm-hmm. But we were getting ready to start the fire, and one of the Navajo relatives comes up to me and he goes, "Hey, Dwight, am I supposed to tie it?" And I looked at him and I said, "Tie what?" He goes, "You know it." And I'm like, no, I don't know what you're talking about, bro. Can you tell me? Yeah. He goes with his eyes and he looks down at his groin and he says, "Am I supposed to tie it?" And I looked at him and I said, "Oh." He was talking about his foreskin. Mm-hmm. Because in Dene culture, the men are taught to tie a string around their foreskin. Mm. Mm. And I had never had anyone ask me that before. Mm-hmm. And so my support and encouragement to him is, this is a welcome lodge. It's a reconnection lodge. It's a recovery lodge. The goal is to reconnect you back with whatever teachings you use in your himadak, in your culture. So you do what's comfortable for you.
You don't want to say, everybody get a string.
I know, right? I was like, let me go find a ball of yarn. Like that would have been an example of how you enforce, your own customs, culture, or tradition on someone else, which might not be a part of their culture.
Yeah, right.
Like, but that was probably one of the most interesting conversations I've ever had with a former relative, in treatment.
It seemed like a sweat would be complicated because again, there's somebody like, well, I don't sweat with women, or women say, I don't sweat this way, or I don't sweat. I only sweat with 4 rocks or lava rocks, or it's just a lot of.
Yeah,
I'm sure it's a lot of not complications, but trying to make sure everyone is comfortable.
I've had that same situation when Dwight had already left NAC, and I was in charge of taking the guys. At one point, our facility had closed down. There was like a little fire, so we had to go back to the women's side, and we were over there. But there had been a point where we were gonna go back to I would drive them back to the sweat so they could get ready. But we also had facilitators that would come in, and they were the ones that facilitated the sweat lodge, and then our relatives would come and join it. Well, we had some very strong-headed, relatives who are very active in their culture. They've done sweat many times. And so when we got there, I let them do what they need to do, and I was in the office. And then one of them came to me and said, oh, they're starting now. And I said, they're starting? You guys are not supposed to start yet? We have to wait for the facilitators. Well, they're starting already. And I was like, oh, no. So long story short, they had butted heads with our facilitators.
Okay.
And it was more like,
this is how we do it.
This is how we do it.
Yeah.
So basically it was, we had the Apaches and we had the Dene family that were like, Apaches like, we do it this way. We don't do like that. Well, we were the ones running it. We do this way. Well, we don't. And oh my goodness, it was just a mess. And I didn't have Dwight there, so I had to kind of just step in and be just like kind of a mediator to be like, okay, look, like I had to explain to our relatives, they're with us as far as the facilitators. So however, they're doing it, that we're kind of just
we're the guests.
You're the guest. You're coming, but that type of I'm not really sure if Dwight can say anything about that, but for me that was only time I really ever seen something different. But this Apache guy, I he was someone I just could relate to, like that comes from the reservation where they're very strong about like this is how it should be, and I respect that. But I just told him, like, well, you're coming to somebody's house, and you can't come to the house and be like, this is where the couch should go, or I don't like, so you got to remember that you're a guest here. You don't live here, you don't live here. And he was just like, oh, okay. So, I mean, like when I try to put it in a better manner, like, to him, but still respecting, what he was saying, then it was, it was handled better. But that's just sometimes what you run into when you have different tribes together,
Mm-hmm.
and especially about the type of sage, and if they use cedar or if they use white sage, like even that was just like, we don't use this in our tribe, we use this, it was just like, okay guys, let's just both use both, whatever you guys want to use.
I think you got to come together when it's something like that. You have to compromise. And if you want to do it your way, then go do it back at home.
Yeah, that's what we
which is fine, but if you're doing it in the community or here, then you guys all got to compromise on whatever it makes everyone feel right. There's no way to say, well, this is how we do it. Then I would say, well, go back home then.
And after years of practice, I got to a point where a lot of times I would try to use a teaching in recovery to get them to understand. So in that situation, if I was confronted with that scenario, what I would tell them is, well, part of what you're doing here at this facility as a participant is you're agreeing to do it our way because your way don't work for you no more. Meaning that your belief systems, your sick belief systems got you here. And part of you doing it your way, meaning power and control, you're not in control, you're not using your power and control tactics to do it your way or maneuver it your way. You're here to change. Part of being able to practice change is being open-minded that okay, I'm here. I do want to participate in sweat, but because I understand as a participant relative, I understand that it's done this way because that's how they have it set up. So I have to be open-minded that if I'm going to sweat, I have to agree that I'm going to do it their way.
Yeah.
Otherwise, I don't have to sweat. I can just sit in my room and be self-piteous or like that.
Yeah, right.
Wait till you go home and then you can do it over there your way.
Go home and do that.
Yeah.
Yeah, you're right. I never thought about it. If you think you're doing that well, then why are you over here for? This is why you're here. It's because you weren't doing it at home.
Right.
Yeah. Okay. That makes really good sense.
And
too,
not
to
only
say
that, but
way.
they're not done with recovery. They're still in recovery, so they're not really ready to start.
Say like, this is what we do.
Yeah.
Oh,
you know what I mean? And then and the way Dwight's approaches when I watched him do groups or I watch him do talk in circle or just even talking in general is he does talk to you in a relatable way where it's more of just he's there to help, and he's there to help guide you if you want that. If you don't, that's okay. But he doesn't stand there and tell you this is how you should do it. This is because I swear, if he was that type of person, I wouldn't even be talking to him because I cannot stand that, I mean, I respect men in their culture, in their traditions, but what I don't appreciate, and this is just how I am, and I'm pretty sure a lot of people just really say it, but if you're gonna teach me like I'm someone, don't yell at me. Don't talk down to me. Don't make me feel, that I'm not cultural enough. Because I'm going to already just zone you out. I'm not going to listen because obviously, I can't respect that. I can't respect you because you don't have any respect for me. So, I love to hear and learn, but I love to learn from people who have the patience or, just have that kindness to want to pull you in and just really, help you. And that's how recovery is if you're standing there and you're treating them like kids, they're going to act like kids. If you're treating them like convicts, prisoners, they're going to act like that. So the whole concept is treating them like family, but also making sure you don't cross that boundary to where they get too comfortable that they think that they can get away with things with you, but just enough to let them know that they're human and that they're going through some things right now. They need to get some counseling, some classes, whatever it may be, whatever treatment it may be, to become the better person for themselves and for their family. Because like we always say in recovery, it's a ripple effect. So if they are not good, no one else is good around them. So in order to heal their whole family and their children, they have to be good first. And
is there a 10-step thing like like the normal way for sobriety, or is it like they have like 12 steps or?
Well, they have in Wellbriety in the native way, they have like they have 12-step as well. But the 12-step for Wellbriety really it really pertains to like your culture, like spiritually. Okay. Rather than the normal AA 12-step, it's almost the same, but they have different ways of saying things to us that we can relate. We're like, oh, okay, we get that, and so. And it's hard to it's easier when you bring out the AA, a lot of people can relate to that. But then when you bring out the Wellbriety, you'll get some people who never been to AA, but that can really relate to the Wellbriety. So but I feel like Wellbriety is just, it's all around. I mean, even if you're not in addiction and you read Wellbriety, like you get it, it makes sense. Yeah, it makes so much sense in your life. And it helps you out with a lot of different types of issues that you never really know you had. So I really
did you have to be really patient? I mean, is there a lot of people that get on with your guys' program and then, fall off.
Oh,
and
yeah.
Come back on and then fall off. I mean, it is something that you guys would have to have patience for us and like it.
Yeah, that it is, especially when we have their graduation type, and we do a lot for the graduation, and then like for them to, it's not really like frustrating, but it's really like what's the good thing is they call and they come back, which is always the best, and they always feel, because already they're coming back with embarrassment
or guilty
shame,
and they're like just shame, like they come in with their head down after they walked out that door with their head up. So we really try to let them know, like, first of all, this is the bravest thing. And we tell the relatives that are getting help, you guys are brave, because not a lot of people are going to admit that something's gone wrong. Like they have an issue with something. So first of all, that's the strongest thing to do, is come in here and tell someone and be vulnerable that you need help. But it is at times when it happens more than 3 or 4 times, and it's kind of like the relatives are coming in and they're not learning anything, but they're just kind of running the system. Then that's when it gets a little frustrating, because you're like keep hitting a wall. But I will say, once when I first started at NAC, there was a relative that was like just not doing the program. Everybody was kind of just like, oh, and he had left, and he looked pretty bad, like it didn't seem like he was going to go the right path. Years later, like 3 years later, we were at the store, and I was with the relatives, and we were at the store. We just come back from a meeting, and he was standing there, and he said hi to me, and I was looking at him, and I kind of was like, what the heck, like, he looks kind of familiar, but and he got close to me, and I recognized who he was, and it was the relative, and he was just clean cut looking. He had his book in his hand, and I asked him how he was doing, and he said that he is running groups. He's been sober. He's going back to school, and that he is part of AA. And I mean, it was amazing. Just,
oh, wow, that's a great story.
Yeah. And then so I asked him, I said, oh, you know what? I'm looking for someone to speak at our group. Would you do it? And he's like, yes, of course. And so it was really awesome to see that. So like I said before, like no matter how frustrated sometimes for us, because we're just like, oh man, like just come back, or you could do it. No matter how frustrating it does, you do get that reward of seeing someone prosper, and it's just amazing. But yeah, it does
right.
kind of get to that point. But again, it's important for us to get ourselves, because we're like sponges, so we soak up so much of what's going on with the relatives that we work with, that we try not to bring that home. So we try, and I remember, I think I spoke with you about that, and you were just like, well, just make sure you bless yourself or you cleanse yourself before you go back into your house with your children, because you don't want to carry whatever that person said to you or talked about, or the things that you were going through. You don't want to carry that in there. And I was just like, oh, okay. So I was always trying to make sure I did that before I walked back into my house, but
I think everybody should do that. When you're any kind of profession, that you're working on too, that people put their problems on you. You need to cleanse yourself when you get home.
Yes.
But, I know we've been going, I think we're at an hour and 40 minutes.
Oh my God, are we? It didn't even seem like it.
We could continue this on the next episode, but I just wanted to the end, I just want to ask Dwight, for the future, what are you working on right now, and what are you working on for the future for your, on your business, and what you're working with Wellbriety?
On the independent consultation part, I'm going to continue to offer services in the form of trainings, technical support, coming into the community and help them design what a wellness program looks like, and whether or not they choose to incorporate from a Wellbriety perspective or a GONA perspective, or even just help them design from an internalized cultural perspective of a community or a tribe. That's definitely what I'm capable of doing now. Continuing to provide support to my current contracts. I do a lot of cultural competency support to Arizona State University.
Okay.
And I've had a really interesting contract just recently with the governor's office, the Office of Missing and Murdered Indigenous Relatives.
Okay.
And so I'm having really interesting experiences as my independent consultation business grows. For a while now, I've had a really strong desire to develop a cultural delivery program where I can train a team of Native facilitators that can go out and facilitate like I do.
Okay.
Because I think that it does take that talent, it does take that know-how, it does take that perseverance for individuals to know how to deliver in the way that the recipient, whoever the audience is, whether it's people, our relatives in treatment or those in IOP programming or support system in the community, to be able to deliver a strongly impacted program that will be effective. So that's a goal that I have. And then just to continue to be available wherever I'm asked to provide support.
Okay.
Whether that's as a speaker on a motivational level or in training or...
Where can we find you at? Like, do you have like a just on Instagram or...
Well, I'm on Instagram. My primary social media outlet is Facebook.
Okay.
But I'm also on Instagram. I don't have LinkedIn. I don't have a website, and I don't use marketing material.
Well, Facebook is probably all you need. Everything's there.
And there's a lot of people who, you need to get a hold of Dwight. Here, let me give you a number.
Yeah.
And honestly, I like and prefer word of mouth as a concept of just spreading the word about what I do. Sinetta said that I know a lot of people, and so as I go through and network in conferences, I'll usually share my electronic contact information and just share that with them, text message and whatnot.
Okay.
But my phone number and my email address have been the same for a while now, so I mean, I did have to change it recently, unfortunately, but like.
Oh, I know why.
Hey, I think all three of us know why. Hey.
But when we do this episode, I'm gonna put your whatever you want me to put on the episode link.
Okay.
There's a bunch of you can put a bunch of links on there. I could put your email or Facebook on there for you.
Okay, sounds good. I'll make sure you get that.
Okay, thank you very much. And Sinetta, what's for you in the future for your
Well, I'm going to
endeavors?
continue doing my mental health first aid training and hopefully go out to the community and to the schools and for our relatives at Native Health. Also, I'm going to be doing youth mental health first aid and working with helping out with signs and symptoms for the youth so that other people can be aware of that, and also incorporating the whole cultural aspect with that. Also, I'm also going to be starting to do suicide prevention training as well, going out to the community and doing that, suicide prevention. And I right now currently do DUI also, so I provide DUI education, and hopefully trying to start a DUI education online because it's kind of hard to get people in to come during the hours that I need them to be there. So doing it online from their home, from the comfort of their home, is what I'm hoping that we can succeed into. And also trying to start a getting some care packages together and going out to the parks and kind of the neighborhood around us to see if, giving out either
for the homeless.
Like
jackets.
I'm trying to hygiene bags and just kind of not forcing people to come and get help, but just letting them know that we're right here and this is where you can come if you need any assistance. So just pretty much just doing a lot of community service work.
So you work for Native Health.
Yes,
right?
Native Health in Central Phoenix.
So I'll put your contacts on there to the episode. So you may want to reach out to my sister Sinetta for mental health, and then Dwight, we want to see him for conferences, and I'm sure he can speak about anything you need him to.
Yeah.
So it sounds like
I said one thing I told Deborah Well, I said, before we go on the podcast, I'm gonna tell Dwight not to say, "Oh, nah," because he always has.
Now I'm trying to think if I said that anytime during.
I know he did it.
Yeah.
You did it. I would have looked at you and said something.
Yeah. Well, it's funny how you two, you guys are a good connection. You guys got with each other.
Yeah.
My sister, you guys are the same. What you guys want to do for the natives, and also you got the same humor.
Yeah.
So. Yeah, it's good to see you guys, connect and get things going for our Native community.
Yeah.
All right. Well, thank you very much, you guys, for coming. We're going to do another episode because I'm sure we got a lot more to talk about.
Oh, my God. So, yes, we do.
We'll just keep on going with some more episodes. And There's Native American Heritage Month, so we'll keep things rolling.
Okay.
All right. Well, thank you for coming, Dwight. Thank you for coming, Sinetta.
Thanks, bro.
Okay. All right. And we'll talk to you guys later.
Okay.
Thank you all for tuning in to the Fight for Existence podcast. If you guys want to keep up with the podcast in general, what you could do is follow the social media account. The Instagram account is going to be Fight for Our Existence. Again, that's Fight number 4 Our Existence. Go ahead and give that a follow. And if you guys have any questions for us or you guys would like to be on the podcast, in the Instagram, there's a link. Go ahead and click that. No matter what kind of platform you guys listen to this podcast on, there's always that plus or that follow button. So go ahead and click that so you guys can get notifications when we upload our next episode. And if you guys are listening on Spotify, what you could do is go ahead and rate the show. And if you guys are only listening on Apple Podcasts, what you can also do is write a review for the show. Thank you all for tuning in to the Fight for Existence podcast, and we will talk to you next time.